Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today I'm doing a bake with me. I am making my birthday cake. It is going to be my 22nd birthday on Thursday. Today currently is Saturday, the Saturday before my birthday. So I am planning on baking the cake today, freezing it, and then Wednesday possibly I'm gonna make the icing, ice it, and then I'm gonna have it for Thursday. And this is quite an elaborate recipe, but I really wanted to try it. I really like to bake. Fun fact about me is I actually used to have a cake business when I was like 12, and I used to make like really elaborate cakes, but this cake is gonna be simple. The wow factor, I guess, is it's like completely homemade. This one is gluten-free, dairy-free. I think it's paleo, I think. I got the recipe off of Pinterest, so I can link it down below if you want to try it. We're gonna get into it. So there's quite a long list of ingredients, but today we're just doing the cake. So the recipe is for a red velvet cake with like a cashew based cream cheese icing. So yeah, so the first step that I have to do is measure out all of the dry ingredients and mix them together in a bowl. So I got this bowl. See if I can find some pictures of the cakes that I used to make. They used to take me like hours and hours to make, but then when I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis when I was 14, it just got to be way too much and I would get tired really easily. So
waking up feeling like it's gonna
if
rain.
you're new to my channel, I like kind of explained this already in my what I eat in a week, but I like to eat a lot of gluten-free, dairy-free. I just find that makes me feel better, but I don't really follow a specific diet anymore. Okay, so the next thing is tapioca starch. So here I'm just measuring out the tapioca flour.
There isn't any color in my dreams. When you ask me if I'm okay, I don't have a lot to say. Can't tell you something I do not know. Maybe just hold me, just hold me.
And then the next thing was coconut flour.
I'm coming.
This cake was a mix of almond flour, coconut flour, and tapioca starch as the base. And then the recipe called for coconut sugar, and then some cacao powder, I believe 2 tablespoons of that,
Sorry if I'm
and then some baking soda,
I don't really have a good excuse.
and then some salt,
When you ask me if I'm okay, I don't have a lot to
and then I just mixed that with a whisk.
I do not know.
So yeah, I've had my KitchenAid since I was 12. I got it for my 12th birthday. My nanny got it for me. And I guess the running joke was that like all the other 12-year-olds were getting like their first cell phone and like all that kind of stuff. There's the oven. I preheated it to 325. But the joke was that all the other 12-year-olds were getting cell phones and I got a KitchenAid.
I'm coming back slowly, so slow.
And Once I mixed all the dry ingredients, I started with the wet ingredients. So first was 4 eggs. Not sure why it only shows 3, but there was 4 eggs. And then the next ingredient was a full can of full-fat coconut milk. And then some red food dye. And then the next step was melted coconut oil, so I just measured that in a bowl and popped it in the microwave. And then next was apple cider vinegar. And then some vanilla extract. And then once the coconut oil was melted, I poured it into the bowl. And then the last thing was almond extract. And then I used my KitchenAid to mix all the wet ingredients together first. And then once that was done, I started adding the dry ingredient mixture, little increments at a time, so it would mix well. I was a little concerned that this bowl wasn't going to be big enough, but it ended up being big enough, just the right size for all the ingredients. So once that was done, I started cutting parchment paper for the bottom of the cake pans. I know there's probably an easier way to do this, but I just wanted to get it done. And then I used some coconut oil spray to stick those to the bottom of the pan and also to grease the pan. And then I poured the mixture into the cake tins. Now this batter actually made 3 cakes, but we didn't think we had 3 tins, so I started out with 2, but then we found a third one. But I ended up just baking the 2 and then together, and then the last one by itself. So I put that in the oven at 325. And the recipe said to bake them for 15 minutes, I believe. And then I've never done this with a cake recipe before, but the instructions said to, after the 15 minutes, switch the cakes around in the oven and cook them for additional 10 minutes. So that's what I did here. And then here I'm greasing the last cake pan once we found it, and putting the rest of the batter in this cake pan and leveling it out. And then once those 2 were baked, I let them sit for about 5 minutes, and then I tipped them over onto these cooling racks so they could cool completely. And I did this for the first round as well, but I didn't film it. I used this little pick that we have. You can use a toothpick to make sure that it was cooked all the way through. And once it was cooked all the way through, I took the cake out. And these are what the 3 cakes look like. So it is Wednesday now. I just got off a really exciting call, and I'm about to make the icing. So my mom so kindly soaked my cashews for me to make them softer. So this recipe is for a vegan, dairy-free cream cheese icing, so I'm excited to try this. So I'm going to be using my blender, so I'm going to get all of the ingredients ready. So here's the cashews. So to start off, I put my soaked cashews into my blender. We soaked them for about an hour before so they'd get nice and soft. And then I measured out my coconut yogurt, poured that in. Then the next ingredient was coconut cream, and I somehow cut my finger on the tab of this can, so that's why you see a paper towel so I don't cut it any further. And I did end up going to get a band-aid just in case you're wondering what the band-aid is on my finger. And then I measured out the coconut cream and put it in the blender. And then the next ingredient was maple syrup. And then solid coconut oil. And then apple cider vinegar again. I read in the recipe that this gives it the cream cheese-like tang. And then the recipe called for some lemon zest. As you can see, I'm struggling with this little mini, looks like a cheese grater. We're gonna get an actual lemon zester. But that's all I had. Then I measured that out and put it in the blender. And then the recipe also called for some of that fresh lemon juice. So I squeezed half of the lemon and just measured it from that little bowl. And then the next ingredient was vanilla extract. And then some salt. Then I put the top on and blended it up. Mixed the icing, transferred it into this bowl, and then the instructions said to, the recipe said to freeze it for half an hour and then whip it with a mixer. So I was going to use my KitchenAid, but because it's in this bowl and this bowl isn't for KitchenAid, I don't want to have to be transferring it each time because you have to do this a couple of times. So I'm just going to use the hand mixer. So once the icing was done being chilled after half an hour, I took it out and whipped it for 2 minutes. I ended up doing this, I think, 3 times. The recipe said it just helps it get fluffier and more of an icing consistency, so that's what I did. Put it in there in the freezer for half an hour and then took it out and whipped it with the mixer for 2 minutes. And then I started to layer my cake. So I put some of that icing in the middle of the layers, spread it out, and put the next layer on. I was gonna level them, but they weren't very dome-like at the top, so I didn't bother. And then I started off by icing the top. I wasn't going to do a crumb coat, but then I decided that there was enough icing to do a crumb coat, so that's what I did. I made sure to fill in those big gaps. Once I was done with the crumb coat, I put it in the fridge for about half an hour to set, and then after that I took it out and did the second layer of icing. And when I was done coating the cake, I had a little bit of icing left, so I decided to do this pretty border at the top. And then I was debating on whether I should do it at the bottom, and I decided to, but there wasn't actually enough icing to go around the full circumference of the cake, so it's just at the front, I guess. But it's all good. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, give it a like. Subscribe to my channel if you're not, and I'll see you in the next one.